Welcome to a special edition of Ed's Not Dead. I'm Robbie Dodd. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. C.H. Siddons.
I'm here. Good morning.
And Mr. Peter Crable.
Hey, man. Bright and early.
Yeah, bright and early on a Saturday.
What's that murmuring in the background?
That murmuring is that we are officially on tour.
First time.
Yeah, first time. Ed's Not Dead this morning. We are gratified to be at James Hubert Blake High School in the Montgomery County Public Schools for the Maryland PTA Diversity Conference. We were asked to attend, and we are going to be interviewing important speakers who are all about diversifying the parent membership of the PTA in Maryland, and certainly working on behalf of diversity and opportunities and achievement for kids in Maryland schools. Nice to be here, right, fellas?
Yeah. Excited.
Yeah, they're going over the agenda for the day right now. This is kind of a unique experience sitting back here while there's like...
The tour bus was really hard to get out this morning.
What's the exact count of how many microphones microphone stands that we forgot to bring?
All of them.
Yeah, all of them. Okay, good. So our guests are just going to have to hold like an old microphone as they talk.
It'll make them leave quicker.
Yeah, that's right. All right.
We just really want to hear ourselves talk.
Yeah.
So we have a big show today. We're going to be interviewing everyone from student advocates for social justice in Maryland schools.
We got state delegates.
We got state delegates here. Who else do we have, Mr. Sids? We have leaders of the Maryland PTA.
And we have some folks that were involved, hopefully, with the student protests, the gun control advocates, right?
Absolutely. Matt Post from Sherwood High School. He's a student member of the Board of Education in Montgomery County. And also Nate Tinbite. He's Kennedy High School, John F. Kennedy High School. And he is a member of the Student Government Association and the president of the MCR SGA. So we're going to get some students on the show today.
That's exciting.
Yep.
Awesome stuff.
All right. It is really cool to be in a school cafeteria
It is.
broadcasting
Yeah.
Ed's Not Dead.
Oh, we just got introduced.
We did?
Hello.
They're talking about
They're
it.
talking
right
about
now.
us right now.
We just waved to them.
I know.
Cool.
It's a little weird.
So we just waved to the crowd, and they're all looking back at us. It's really awkward.
It's very uncomfortable.
But it's pretty cool. Today, just a few plugs for recent Ed's Not Dead broadcasts. If you haven't listened yet, check out our interview with Carol Ann Tomlinson, which was outstanding.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Sids, for booking that.
We got a lot of people that are interested in hearing it because they've heard of differentiation and they want to hear from her.
Yep, and we get really into the weeds on differentiation.
I'd like to also plug my
Your blog?
my blog that's coming out.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I'm
Blog
gonna
post.
post it. Yeah.
It's about
it's going to be posted.
It's about working out and toning your flaccid body.
Jesus, that's so inappropriate.
That's true.
So mean.
Anyway, I had to take a shot at you.
My slinking shoulders.
Anyway, yeah, tell us, just give us a little.
It's called the Orange Theory Classroom, and I went to the gym for the first time in a long time, much to my chagrin. My wife convinced me to go, and it was a really great experience for me physically and mentally, but also I felt like connections to really good instruction.
And then you wrote about it.
And then I wrote about it.
Yeah.
How many edits did Mr. Krabs have to do on the blog?
I'm a narrative writer, and I tell way too much, so I always appreciate Crable's Spartan way of
It was
communicating.
good. It was like 5 pages. It was like, probably got to cut this down a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. It was just like,
It's just a lot.
yeah.
It would lose people's attention.
Yeah.
It's down to 900 words.
Yeah, it's really short and concise. and to
I
the
had a
point.
high school journalism teacher. Her favorite word was pithy.
Pithy.
Crable likes pithy.
Pithy.
He's all about brevity, right?
Is that what pithy means?
Yeah, pithy is short and to the point. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It's an important writing term. So
Like a pithy comeback.
He got it to the point where it's pithy.
Pithy.
I thought pithy denoted like there was some sort of
smart
negative,
aleck.
demeaning
It sounds negative.
quality to it.
Could she have been telling me I was pithy and I didn't understand what she was saying?
You're like, oh, thanks for
It's been all these years.
Okay, Google
Thanks for
it.
the compliment.
Look it up, Mr. Sids.
What does pithy mean?
Of language or style, concise and forcefully expressive. Do you want to hear the remaining one?
Boom.
No.
All right, so let's get ready for our first guest. All right, boys, we are excited to have Frances Frost, my old friend, and also, more importantly, the Diversity Inclusion Committee chairperson from the Maryland PTA. She is spearheading this year's Maryland PTA Diversity Conference. Hi, Frances.
Hello.
It's great to have you on Ed's Not Dead.
I'm excited.
And we all know that Frances is a loyal listener, right?
That's right. Yeah.
I am.
And she probably, of our loyal listeners, we get on her nerves probably more than.
That's good. I think that's what we wanted to
You
do.
gotta needle a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What did Frances say in her introduction to this morning when she introduced us to the audience?
I only overheard snippets, but it involved screaming.
Yeah, she drives across
the
the
radio.
county and she listens to us.
You all are my drive kids across the county podcast to listen to.
That is so great. And full disclosure, when I was a relatively young principal, Frances was the PTA president at the school that I was the principal of, and we had some great years working together, right?
Yes. So I've had years of practice of
You have.
needling you.
And dealing with me.
Of dealing, I think would be the
Exactly.
appropriate
Needling.
term.
That's good.
Well, Frances is a champion for kids and for diversity, social justice in our school. So we're glad to have you. And
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for asking
Thanks for
us
being
to
here.
come to the conference.
Yeah,
So,
I thought this would be cool.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Give us your vision for the conference this year.
Well, this is the Maryland PTA Diversity Conference. It was formerly called the Emerging Minority Leaders Conference up until this year. But we renamed it because we wanted it to have more of a inclusive title and for people more to understand what it was about. It's not just about leaders, but also about how do we address the issues of our culturally, racially, linguistically diverse children, children of color, families in poverty, our immigrant families, all of those issues. How do we as PTAs, how do we talk about those issues? How do we make that part of what we do, as well as talking about class size and new school buildings? But how do we support all the families in our community? And at the same time, how do we raise those parents up to be leaders in the PTA so that they can speak to those issues as well? So the idea for today is to do all of that by talking with Maryland legislators, PTA leaders, parent leaders, and some of our community organizations that are working with our immigrant populations, LGBTQ children, English language learner children. So we'll be talking to all of those about the different issues that they advocate and work around.
Okay, so Frances said that she had never done this before. It sounds like she's
Very well done. Jeez.
maybe one of us should be replaced on the show, like me, the host. Okay, well that's awesome, boys. What other questions do you have for Frances?
What kind of activities are you trying to have individual PTA organizations do at their individual schools?
Each local PTA, they do their own activities. And so from the state point of view, we support them. As diversity chair, I've given webinars so that they can take some of this information back home, and given them support from emails and calls about activities they're doing. And some of those are the traditional international night, which is great, but we want them to push beyond that into how do you continue that relationship with families after you've had the wonderful evening of food and dance, which I love myself. But how do we continue that relationship with families, right? When we have the back to school night, how are we being inclusive of all families and making sure that we're bringing them all into our PTA?
Right.
And even thinking about how PTA meetings are structured. Are we making it inclusive? Are we having translators if we need to? And so how do we just make all families feel like they belong in the PTA and there's a place for them?
What would you say is like the biggest barrier to connecting those families with the school community at large?
I think one of the biggest issues really is a cultural barrier, right? Where sometimes families, particularly our immigrant families, they're not used to the American school system and this whole idea of volunteering in school. The idea that parents actually have an input that school administrators will listen to. And so just getting them to understand that that's an acceptable way for parents to participate in school is really hard. And it's not just immigrant families, but when we look at African American families too, it's the whole history of our culture, our country, and education and politics. That is still something that we're still working through as a school system, as a people, and how do we build that trust and build that relationship that everybody feels like their voice is going to be heard.
Sure. So some of the different schools I've worked at have had vastly different, involved PTAs and sizes of PTA. So how do you go about building a bigger, more robust PTA and to get those parents involved? I mean, you want to reach out, you want to invite them, but how do you actually get them in the door and to understand that they have a voice and start using that voice as well?
I think there's different things to think about. One that we'll talk about today is really being clear on what your message is. Do all families understand what a PTA is? Do the PTA leaders understand what a PTA is and what their purpose is supposed to be? And as a parent, I want to give my time somewhere where I feel it's valuable.
Right.
So I need to understand what PTA is and how that benefits my child. So that's the work that we have to do.
So give me the elevator speech, the PTA elevator speech. What's hey, join the PTA.
For me, I always tell parents that PTA is an advocacy organization. I don't sell cupcakes. I don't sell mulch. For my child's PTA, we sell oranges. That is our one fundraiser, right? And then we're done.
The halos?
Yes, right? Oranges. Can I do an ad? Oranges, tangerines, grapefruit.
Right.
But
everybody gets to plug something.
Right. We do that. So we just do that one, because then the rest of the time we can focus on advocating for children. And that's really what PTA is supposed to be about, looking at whether it's within your school. How do we make this school better? How do we make sure that children get the resources they need to learn? How do we make it a better environment? How do we make sure children feel safe and secure in school? That is the work that we are supposed to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Frances, thanks for having us at the conference.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for your continued advocacy for kids. Frances has clearly walked the walk. She has been a local school PTA president. She has been the president of the Montgomery County Association of PTAs,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And now she's working at the state level, so she has clearly dedicated the last decade or so to working on behalf of our kids. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
All right, so thanks a lot, Frances.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, and I look forward to hearing the whole thing.
Keep spreading the word about it. It's not dead.
Oh, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Screaming it all.
Especially when I'm driving across the county.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Frances Frost.
Thank you.
All right, our next guest on Ed's Not Dead at the Maryland PTA Diversity Conference is Delegate Marice Morales. Delegate Morales, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us, guys, for having me. It's really been a fun discussion, and I'm looking forward to jumping right into some of the questions that we have today.
You were just on a panel for an hour, so you've been answering a lot of questions.
That's
We've
correct.
been bombarded.
Right. So we appreciate you
We're
coming
going to do
on.
them all again.
Yeah, no. We're going to have different ones, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We have better questions, probably.
We have some very active parents. That's what we want. We
That's
want
good.
active parents in our school systems.
Real quick before we hit you with the first question.
Sure.
A little bit about your background.
So I am a Peruvian American. I was born and raised in the United States, went through the public school system, was an ESOL student during elementary school, and it's because of great teachers and public education that I am who I am today. And I think at very early on in my life, I felt very blessed and privileged to have been born in a society where education is not denied to anybody. Mm-hmm. Also, the Supreme Court told us that in Pilar v. Doe. But I've just been very cognizant of just the role that education has in elevating folks, through different economic statuses in society. And education is the sole equalizer, I believe. And I'm glad. I love the title of your podcast.
It's not dead. It's not dead. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. So, in your legislative leadership, and it seems like you probably always wanted to be a politician. Because you're
Guilty.
Casey always wanted to be a teacher, and you always wanted to be a politician.
That's right.
Yeah. I didn't know that I could be poor
How old were,
and still be a
How old
politician.
were you when you were elected to office?
I was 25 in the primary and then 26 by the general.
That
Wow.
is impressive.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I was doing when I was 25.
Crable was like
He was in
backpacking
several
in
bands.
Australia
I was
or something.
lumberjacking.
Oh, that's right. You were lumberjacking.
Were you really?
Yeah, in Colorado, right? Is that right?
All right. So in your leadership in Montgomery County and in Maryland, what are the issues right now that you're working on that either directly or indirectly impact education?
That's a great question. So, because I come from a strong public education background, for me, it's essential that our schools have the resources and our educators have the resources that they need so that our students are doing their very best.
Sure.
So, supporting community-based schools, we've increased funding for that in this budget year, making sure, and then obviously hearing from our youth and looking at issues like gun reform. Within the Judiciary Committee, on gun day, folks were in hearings until 2 a.m. that day.
Wow.
So we set aside $30 million for school safety, in addition to us already increasing the budget line for our schools. And in Montgomery County, our needs are just ever growing, as you know.
Right.
Montgomery County, I'm very cognizant of the fact that we are the largest school system in the state and 17th in the country. And I think that just embracing the beautiful diversity that our schools represent is it's very important. And the delegation also needs to reflect that. And wherever I go, I'm not shy about saying, I was an ESOL student, and I know that there's a stigma among students. I'm sure you've seen it among your own students.
Sure.
That story needs to be told over and over again. And as much as I hate being the token Latina in the room,
Right.
it's almost like I can't sit on my power and not do anything
Sure.
to voice those needs. So
You have to be authentic, right? And that's your story.
So you talked about your experience as an ESOL student. It sounds very near and dear to your heart. So what's being done on the state and local level to address some of the changing demographics? Classrooms today look vastly different, honestly, from even 5 years ago. And sometimes I can definitely tell that we as an education workforce maybe are not quite prepared to deal with different students. So
That's right.
how and what are we doing to kind of get our schools prepared to deal with students who are different than they were just recently?
Unfortunately, I don't think we're doing enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's because I can't be the only one making that case.
Sure.
And when I've had to stand up to make that case, I've actually been punished for it.
Wow.
That's why, for example, I'm not on the Apple ballot. And again, I speak. I'm a very authentic person. And
Sure.
I think you can see that. And so sometimes when you have to come and be the bearer of bad news, it's not always going to be receptive.
So what would you like to see?
I would like, for example, and again, the state. This is something. I'm just speaking like an average citizen,
Sure.
because the state doesn't have that role. All we do is literally cut the check. But what I would like to see is for there to be an intentional effort in looking at kind of like what's going to be happening within the 5 and 10 next years. If you look at kindergarten, first and second grade enrollment, 50% or more of our kids are of Hispanic or will need ESOL needs.
Sure.
And we took out, it's my understanding, because I took the time out of my day to meet with ESOL students, because this is, again, it's something that I'm very invested in.
Yeah.
And I hear from the ESOL students time and time again that what they need is, I believe that there's, and please correct me, there's a title for a position, I think it's second language acquisition expert, and I think the county only had like 10 of those positions.
Sounds about right.
And they just eliminated those positions. Right. So things like that run counter, with to what we actually need, and the numbers are there letting us know, listen, eventually these kids are going to be the majority of the school system.
Yeah.
So whether you're pro-immigrant or anti-immigrant, the facts are there, and we need our kids to be able to graduate and go to college so that they can become the next educators,
Sure.
they can become the next entrepreneurs, engineers, etc.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the things we've talked about on this show a lot is getting more teachers, for example. We already don't have a lot of teachers that are coming out of teacher preparation schools. There's a lack of candidates, first of all, and second of all, there's a lack of candidates who are people of color. So one of the things that I've talked about before on this show is if a child is not having a positive experience in school, whether they're African American, Latino, whatever, they're probably not going to want to be a teacher,
Right.
Because they've experienced it in such a negative way,
Right.
So that's one issue. Do you have any thoughts on how we might get more teachers of diversity in schools?
That's
I mean,
a
you
great
have to.
question,
It's
yeah.
important to see yourself in the folks that are teaching you. I mean, did you have
Absolutely.
that experience yourself, and what kind of things do you have in store?
So one of the things that I talked about with these group of teachers that I met with, I know that we have the what's the consortium where you have like law and the arts,
like the academies. Yep.
That we should do something for education in that same way.
Yeah.
And then work with, and then in the role of what the state can do, we can connect with with Montgomery College and the state higher ed schools, so that we can say, if you do 2 years within the academy, and then whatever, and then those 2 years can count as credit for your community college or towards your 4-year degree. I think we should be recruiting among our own students.
Sure.
Because we have the diversity here. We're rich in diversity. So
you are all the diverse future teachers we need are in Montgomery County.
Yeah, we have
right
them
now, and
Yeah.
we're not directing them towards being public school teachers.
Yeah.
And we could be doing that. So anything you can do to support that,
Absolutely.
I'm really that's one of my pet peeves.
That's our comparative advantage. So why not exploit it?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So you, another item near and dear to your heart is criminal justice reform. And we've talked a little bit about the school to prison pipeline. And if you listen to our dear Secretary of Education, it doesn't exist.
That's right. There is no system.
Right.
So
There's also no education system.
yeah, there's no education
And
system.
other tasty nuggets such as that. Anyway,
Oh my God.
so what are we doing on the state and local level? I guess, one, to recognize for those that still think that it's not a thing, but really to address the disparate suspension rates, discipline rates, and I guess the sort of second or tertiary part of that question is, how do you convince people that, part of the disparate rates in discipline is not just, those kids are doing stuff, is that, kids are actually treated differently. So
no, that's a great question. So one of the things that I was very proud of being a part of during my time on the House Judiciary Committee is when we worked on justice reinvestment, and that was it was based on science-based policy changes. So we worked with the Pew Foundation, and we looked at kind of the rates of incarceration and kind of the top charges that get people within the system. Sure. So looking at our how good policy making can result from science and from data. I think that could be modeled obviously academically as well, and you can also make kind of the assumption that the same rates, like why is it that our black and brown men are incarcerated at higher rates? So you could definitely just kind of mirror that into our school system. And one of the things that I've learned from taking the initiative of attending some of these conferences. The NAACP has a great national PowerPoint on looking at how our students are treated differently. Kids that are have a track record of being suspended earlier on in their academic lifetime are 80% more likely to be seen as not gifted.
Yep.
So we're basically perpetuating that child into just kind of stereotyping them. So what the Maryland legislature has done, we passed a bill this year banning the use of suspension for the grades of kindergarten, first and second grades.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if the bill passed as drafted. There's always amendments, and there's always stakeholders, and the State Department of Education will
And
come in.
let's pause for a second to note that that kids do get suspended in elementary school in first and second grades,
That's
which is
crazy.
astounding.
Yeah.
They do.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to note that and to say that it is a problem.
Right.
And starting
If a kindergartner bites somebody, what are you going to do? You got to suspend them.
you probably have that on your record.
I
That's
never
right.
suspended a
No,
kindergartner.
I'm saying you probably bit someone when you were a kindergartner.
That's possible. Anyway, go ahead.
I had a cousin that was she
was
was
a
always
she was a biter?
She was a biter.
They're always biters.
She was bigger than me, and she was still biting. So her teeth were stronger than mine.
Anyway, okay.
Anyway, I digress. But no, there was a good point that I wanted to make, and it just escaped
And I
me.
ruined it.
No,
we
it's
both
okay.
ruined it.
That's
we
passage
did.
we do.
with or without amendments.
No,
Yeah.
but I wanted to make another point. The science, the data was letting us know that, and I think I'm sure you've heard this analogy ad nauseum, but for the same crime, a male versus a white male versus a black male would be thrown the book at them, right, by the judge. So similarly, you would have that in the school system. So that was something that we really took to heart, and I think that the legislature has done a good job.
Sure.
We addressed this. Of course, there's going to be there's a lot more needs. There are a lot
Sure.
more needs, and I think that voicing that a student cannot just be looked at their behavior. Okay, that's a bad kid. Obviously, the child has needs. I mean,
Sure.
depending on what their situation is at home. That's why we have in the legislature we have also addressed the need to increase funding for community-based schools so that kids have access to health care.
Sure.
If there are mental health issues, trauma. Violence in the home, sexual assault, etc. And I wanted to address this earlier when I was asked what kinds of things I've been working on that affect education. And one of the things is Title IX. Kind of the Title IX progress that we made under the Obama administration. Obviously, Secretary DeVos has
Trying to dismantle.
Trying to dismantle and destroy.
It's exactly
Systematically
right.
dismantling, yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Super accessible on social media. Marice Morales, I'll spell it out for you. Marice is the first name. Morales is the last name. My mother made up my name. It's half her name, half my dad's.
I like it.
Maritza and Caesar. So Marice. Please don't call me Marice. It hurts my feelings. It makes me think that I'm in elementary school all over again, and
no.
the boys are making fun of my name.
Well, again,
It
thank
sticks
you.
with you for a while, doesn't it?
Forever.
So many people will
Yeah.
answer my emails with, Dear Miss Siddons. I'm like, no. My name's Casey, but
Yeah.
it's a boy and a girl name, I guess.
Right. There's a lot of unisex names, like Kelly. Apparently, the Irish use that for both men and women. So
My entire brothers, Jordan and Corey and Casey, all
Yeah, they can
unisex
all- yeah,
names.
Yeah.
I went to school with a Devin and even Sean and Shane.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Shane.
Interchangeable.
Shane is like a 70s.
Well, because the Irish used to have so many children that they just need to name them. Well, just pick names. We don't even know if they're girls or boys.
That's just horrible.
Is that a broad brush? 1800s. Is it too soon to talk about that?
Delegate Morales, thank you for joining Ed's Not Dead. And on behalf of the guys and citizens of Montgomery County, thank you for all that you're doing for our kids in Annapolis to make sure that they've got the kind of resources and support that they need.
it's the greatest honor of my life. Thank you so much.
All right, and we want to see some Ed's Not Dead pictures on your awesome
Absolutely.
Instagram feed. I follow you on Instagram.
Great.
So
What's the Ed's Not Dead? What is it?
at Ed's Not Dead PC on Twitter.
Okay.
Yep.
And,
We're on Facebook, and
Yeah, Casey's not set up an Instagram account yet, so
it's just another social media account that I wouldn't use. Like Facebook, I can't. I can use Twitter. My skill set's
End
very
of
low.
list.
That's it.
all right.
I thought you would actually be more hip to social media since your students are so
Well,
involved.
he is pretty good. He's the king of Twitter.
I'm the king of
Okay.
Twitter.
Gotcha.
That's true. The self-proclaimed
All right, Delegate
king.
Morales, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, good to see you.